Why am I standing in front of this chart? Because about, 4 months ago, we passed in this body H.R. 2. We passed legislation that we know, we don't believe, we know would take significant strides to securing the border of the United States, reestablishing operational control, limiting the flow, limiting the power of cartels, empowering ICE, empowering Border Patrol, reestablishing the rule of law so that we can be the beacon of hope that people want to aspire to come here and live under. But of course, that bill is sitting over in a Senate that doesn't give a whit. So what do we do about it? That's my question for Republicans. I can sit here and bash my Democratic colleagues all day long for not caring about what's happening to Texas, for not caring about the 5 kids in the school district where I live who died from fentanyl poisoning, not caring about the 200 a day dying from fentanyl poisoning while fentanyl pours across our border, not caring about what's happening to Border Patrol agents, not caring that the Secretary of Homeland Security lied about Border Patrol agents allegedly whipping Haitian migrants, which we knew didn't happen, and the Secretary knew didn't happen. 2 hours before, he went to the microphone and said they did it, and they did it for systemic racism. All of that is true, and my Democratic colleagues will not want to pass H.R. 2. So what will Republicans do about it? That is the question. And the answer is that we should recognize the power of the purse. James Madison, Federalist Paper number 58. The House of Representatives can not only refuse, but they alone can propose the supplies requisite for the support of the government. They, in a word, hold the purse. This power over the purse may in fact be regarded as, and this is the most important part, the most complete and effectual weapon with which any constitution can arm the immediate representatives of the people for obtaining a redress of every grievance and for carrying into effect every just and salutary measure. What that means is we get to decide how the tax dollars and the borrowed dollars are spent to carry out the laws of the United States and no one else. We control the power of the purse. We are the people's house. It is our job to decide how those dollars are spent and then hold the executive branch accountable for carrying out the laws using those taxpayer dollars. That is not only our opportunity, it's our duty in the House of Representatives. So that is the question for Republicans. Will we take inventory and decide whether we care more about steak dinners at night and making a golf event or coming down to, do 3 votes in a week and then get home for the weekend? I mean, I noticed today's Thursday. We have 1 appropriations bill passed. We're not coming in tomorrow. We're blowing out for a 6-week recess. The government's going to run out of money on September 30th. That's one thing we know. Most people I represent would tell you they don't think we ought to spend more money. We ought to spend less. So the question is, are we going to find a way between now and September 30th, approximately 60 days from now, are we going to find the ability to pass appropriations bills that reduce spending, take our country back, but most importantly, check the executive branch from the tyranny that they are engaging in over the American people? The Department of Homeland Security is decidedly not securing the homeland. It's just true by any objective measure. Last September, I asked my House and Senate Republican colleagues if they would vote for a CR and continue to fund the tyranny being waged by this administration. I sent a letter with 6 pages of examples of how a CR would continue funding the very things the GOP members of this body campaign against. Now, that was September 27th of last year, about, 40 days before the November election. What are the things GOP members campaign against? Open borders and funding for open borders. Authoritarian bureaucrats, the FBI, the IRS, the ATF, and the funding for those bureaucrats. Tyrannical public health agencies that shut down our economy, mandated vaccines, mandated masks. Funding for those agencies. Destructive energy policies through the Inflation Reduction Act, EPA, and Department of Energy, undermining the ability of this country to produce reliable energy that makes the world work. When, by the way, 3 billion people on this planet do not have reliable energy. 1 billion people don't have electricity at all. Funding for radical anti-American and anti-biology ideologies at the Department of Education, NPR, and HHS. Funding for the degradation of our national security with a woke Department of Defense. But nevertheless, 22 Senate Republicans still supported the CR, as did 10 House Republicans. Funding runs out on September 30th. And here we sit once again with 2 notable differences. We are now operating under bloated spending levels established by the FY23 omnibus bill passed last December. Now, if you don't know what that means, it's just the way this place works. Spending runs out in September. If we haven't passed appropriations bills through both bodies signed by the president, people freak out. They want the lights to stay on. October 1st rolls around. They pass a continuing resolution to keep the government going. Might pass it for a day or a week or a month. Often, they pass it for about 75 days. Now, why would you do that on September 30th for about 75 days? Do the math. That ends up in the middle of December. Now, why would the uniparty establishment Washington elite, who don't give a crap about debt, who don't care about what's happening to their country at the end of the day, but really care more about getting home for Christmas? That's why. So, what happened last December? That happened. A couple of days before Christmas, a $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill was passed, funding Ukraine to the tune of about $45 billion, increasing defense spending by about 10%, increasing non-defense by about 7%. All of that got done while what? We're at $32 trillion of debt and counting. Long before, by the way, a big deal was cut, raising your debt another $4 trillion on Memorial Day. Now, again, that happened while Republicans were in charge of the House. And 17 Republican senators voted for that. Why? I'll tell you why. The defense establishment in this town, combined with those who wanted to try to do something for Ukraine, said, oh, well, we know we have a lot of debt, but we got to cut a deal. I want to go home for Christmas. I want to wear a blue and yellow pin on my lapel. I want to feel good about myself, but that's okay. I'll pass the buck down to my kids and grandkids with a big pile of debt. So again, I'm going to ask my Republican colleagues, will we vote to continue to fund this tyrannical government while our border is wide open, little girls are getting abused, some 80 to 90,000 Americans a year dying from fentanyl poisoning, cartels empowered, China empowered? Are we going to continue to do that? We have the power of the purse. Will we use it? Or will we curl up in a little ball like we tend to do every single year and say, oh no, they're going to criticize us for a government shutdown? Every year, like clockwork. Now, I'm all for moving the appropriations bills and getting them done by September 30th. But I can promise you, as sure as the sun is coming up tomorrow, Chuck Schumer and Senate Democrats are not going to bless the appropriations bills that we move through the House. They're not gonna. They're gonna then want to claim it is Republicans who are shutting down the government. But the question is, when we wake up on October 1st, are we Republicans going to have agreed to spend even one more dollar, to advance a tyrannical government that is stepping over the rights of the American people at the Department of Justice, the FBI, that are funding a woke government at the Department of Defense that leaves $85 billion behind in Afghanistan with no real accountability?